small town in the middle of nowhere, it was the kind of place people passed through but never stopped. The houses were old, the streets cracked and uneven, and a sense of something lurking just beyond the edge of your sight made the air feel thick and heavy. It was the kind of place where no one asked too many questions, and if something strange happened, it was best to forget about it quickly. In the center of this town was an old, decaying mansion, long abandoned. The windows were boarded up, the roof sagging, and the garden overtaken by wild vines and weeds. The locals called it the Whitford House. No one ever ventured too close, and the few who did, always returned with strange looks in their eyes. Their faces pale, as though they'd glimpsed something that could never be forgotten. Claire, a young woman new to town, had heard the whispers about the mansion. They were all too eager to tell her. Stay away from Whitford House. It's not safe. But Claire, a skeptic with a love for history, couldn't resist. She had to know what lay inside. One evening, driven by a strange urge, Claire walked up to the mansion. As she approached the front gate, the temperature seemed to drop suddenly. The wind picking up in a way that made the trees sway unnaturally. The gate creaked open, as if inviting her in, and Claire, curious and undeterred, stepped inside. The house was cold and dark, the floors covered in a thick layer of dust. As she explored, she began to notice strange symbols etched into the walls, almost as if someone had carved them in desperation. The air seemed to hum with an eerie energy, and as she walked deeper into the house, she felt a weight pressing on her chest. In the grand living room, she found an old portrait hanging crookedly on the wall. The painting depicted a family, smiling faces, dressed in clothes from the late 1800s. But their eyes were wrong. They were too wide, too knowing, and they followed her every movement. Suddenly, the floorboards creaked behind her. Claire whipped around, her heart pounding in her chest. But there was nothing there, just the shadows, dark and shifting. Then, a whisper. "Help us!" Claire froze. The voice was low and guttural, like it was coming from deep within the walls. She felt a cold breath on her neck. She spun around, but still, no one was there. Her heart raced. She took a step back, but the whisper came again, clearer this time. "Help us escape." Panicking, Claire dashed for the door, but as she turned the corner to leave, the house seemed to shift. The windows were bricked up, and the hallway stretched endlessly in both directions. The whispering grew louder, until it was all she could hear. She could feel the presence of something watching her, something ancient, trapped within the house. Her mind raced. The family in the portrait, they weren't just figures in a painting. They were the ones whispering to her, their souls still bound to the house. They were the ones whispering to her, their souls still bound to the house. They had been trapped here for over a century. Unable to escape, doomed to call out to anyone who wandered inside. Desperate, Claire ran through the hallways, the shadows flickering and following her every step. She could hear them now, their cries growing more frantic. And then, as if the house itself was alive, it began to speak to her, not with words, but with the press of an invisible force against her chest. She could feel their grief, their sorrow, their desperate need to be free. The last thing Claire remembered before the world went black was the cold fingers of something pulling at her, as if trying to drag her into the walls themselves. When the local police arrived the next morning to investigate her disappearance, they found only her flashlight on the front steps of the Whitford house. The mansion, as always, stood silent and unmoving. But for the people of the town, the whispers from within the walls grew louder. Thank you for watching.